carbon dating, bloodstains, a negative image predating photography. The Shroud of Turin is a battleground of scientific inquiry and religious belief. Can modern science unravel the secrets of this enigmatic cloth, or does it point to something beyond our understanding? Join us as we explore the evidence, the theories, and the unanswered questions surrounding the world's most debated artifact. Tonight on Newsworthy, 2 words and 2 question marks.
Welcome to Newsworthy.
Hello, hello, hello.
I'm Steve.
I'm Brett.
And Jerry.
Welcome to the show, guys. As whatever he's doing over there. What are you doing with your phone?
Trying to pull up Twitch.
Oh, well, that's weird.
Actually, what I'm doing is trying to help improve the
His video.
the viewers' viewing pleasure. I blocked my face.
That makes, could you raise that up and block it from me? That would be the most pleasurable thing
The
I've
most
seen
epic.
all day. Hey,
Yeah, you saw.
if you're at home or you're on Twitch or you're checking us out on YouTube, you may notice that we all have matching
Oh yeah.
head attire. Check that out. Just want to give a quick shout out to these guys. They are a new company here local in Lawrenceburg. They don't even have a website yet. You have to go to their Facebook, which is Off the Holler Hat Company.
That's a Kentucky company.
It absolutely is. My guy, he's originally from the coal mines. Now get this. We talked a little bit. I had a good chance to talk with the guy who does this. He is 6'4", and when he first went into the workforce, it was in the coal mines. He told me that he would on several different, depending on which mine he was in, he would have to crawl on his knees for 3 miles just to get to work.
We were just talking about
I thought they used to have carts on tracks.
Not in every shaft.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. So
It's just unbelievable.
he now does this with his fiance. They make these hats, and I just want to tell you, I'm not really a hat person because they give me headaches because I have such a big head. But the quality of this is top notch.
Yeah.
They custom did our logo and everything on the hat, and this hat costs $23. Freaking fantastic deal.
that's just same quality as like I like the Columbia hats. It's the exact same quality as
Yeah.
those.
So off the Holler Hat Company on Facebook. Check them out. Tell them you heard about us on Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry. They'll know who we are since we ordered a bunch of hats. I
And
surprised
they're
the
not a
guys.
sponsor, right? We're just
No, they're not a sponsor at all.
we
They're just a local company trying to make it. So give these guys a shout out. Tell them you heard about it on us on our program, and help those folks out. They're awesome. They're great people to work with.
Yeah.
My guy works 8 to 10 hour shift and then comes home and works another 10 hours on freaking hats. I don't know
Where
how.
does he work? Not coal mines anymore.
Oh, no. He works at a huge automotive factory in central Kentucky. I'm not going
Glad
to
he got out of the mines.
So, but yeah, check them out. Off the Holler Hat Company on Facebook. Check them out. Anywho, how you guys doing?
It's been a good week.
It's been an amazing scientific week this week. We learned about all this new stuff with the pyramids, which we're going to do an episode on post haste, I'm pretty sure. Jerry's like, hey, I don't want to talk about it. We're going to talk about the. Look at the look at his face.
I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. I don't even know what topic you're
Yeah,
discussing.
exactly. So we're going to talk about, we got that scientific discovery. We're going to Saturn, or the moon of Saturn, Titan. No, not Titan. What's it? Is it Titan? They're doing the dragonfly thing. They're sending it just there, and it's this cool new probe that they're going to use. That's pretty awesome. However, I don't know if you guys heard this story, but scientists have taken all the way down to the root of things, and they no longer trust atoms. Yeah,
Hey, man,
thanks.
You stole us.
Thanks for that.
Sorry. I just wondered if that was it.
I'm done.
Man.
I'm over it.
I'm bad.
Brett, when we first started this, he would do that every episode. Like, I almost stopped doing dad jokes because of that. He was so bad at
That's why you kept doing it. You know you loved it.
Oh man.
Did you say Saturn's moons?
it. One of Saturn's
I just Googled it. Says, while no missions are currently actively exploring Saturn's moons. I guess I just ruined that
Nope.
one too.
No, we're not actively exploring. We're starting to the process. Within 10 years, we're going to have another program. It's past the design stage. It's in the build stage.
Well, I'm glad you guys are having a good week. I'm not so much having a bad one.
Oh yeah.
My wife found
Looked
out
at
I
the
was
Mary again.
cheating on her.
Oh.
Yeah. She found out because of all the letters that I was hiding. She's so pissed. Swear she'll never play Scrabble with me again.
That's a good one. You should have stole his punchline there.
Should have.
I didn't want to. It was so unfunny. I didn't want any part of that.
That's a good one right there.
Mine's not really a good one. What do you call a cult that is hard to get into?
A what?
A cult that is hard to get into. Difficult. I told you it wasn't that funny.
Can we please start this show over?
Tell us a dad joke.
Oh, I got another good one. What's the difference between oral and rectal thermometers?
The taste.
See? It feels like shit.
That one is self-explanatory. How can you not get that one?
All right.
Mm-mm.
Before my wife got pissed at me when she found out I was cheating, she convinced me to get orthopedic insults. Thought it was a dumb idea at first, but I stand corrected. Now that's the one you should have made fun of.
I'm not going to laugh at any of your jokes. I'm mad at you.
All right, you won the dad joke competition for tonight.
I'm equal employment stealer. I stole one of his too.
Oh man.
You guys need to come up with ones that are not so self-evident. I may have heard those. I didn't remember it, but especially that is. How's that not just obvious?
To be fair, I've not come up with any of these. I steal them all from Reddit.
Good place. They got a good dad joke
Oh,
line,
It's always the better in the comments. Always.
usually.
Always better.
I've never gone to the comments, so I need to start doing
Oh,
There's some
it's a
funny
good-
people there.
That's, this world is so full of funny people.
Yep.
I want to tell you all a story about kindness. Y'all want to hear a good story?
Sure.
Yeah.
So everybody knows that I do real estate through Century 21. And we had here in Lawrenceburg, we had a local indoor fair where a lot of local communities businesses got together, had an affair inside. It was great. It was Saturday, they filled 2 gymnasiums at the high school with stuff, plus all the hallways. And I mean, there was a lot of folk there. So we were doing like a little we had a big bucket or like a little big basket, like huge, half the size of this table, full of Easter eggs and like grass. So the kids could come up and get one. It was the first kid and his mom that walked around. And he's like, "Can I have an egg?" And I was like, "Absolutely, can I have an egg." You know how I am. So he reaches down and gets the egg. And I was like, "Here's one catch. If you get a Reese cup, you got to share that with me. That's my Reese cup." Okay. And he cracks his egg. Sure as shit, it was a Reese cup. And so he's like, "Here you go." I was like, "No, man, I'm just kidding. You can have a Reese cup." He's like, "No, seriously, you can have it." I was like, "Oh." So I grabbed him. He had a little bag because they were giving bags out the front door. So I grabbed his bag and I had this whole big bag of just eggs that we had, refills. I just put like 30 eggs in his bag. I'm like, "Dude, you stay kind and you will reap great rewards." It made me so happy.
That's awesome.
Because most of the time, littles,
Right.
selfish little
No way.
goblins, you know what I mean? And he was just all about it. I kept that Reese cup all day. Then finally I ate it. But it's a Reese cup after all. Who's going to waste that?
Yeah, well, glad you didn't let him melt.
They aren't really speaking of Reese, have you seen the peanut butter jelly Reese cups?
No, that sounds gross.
Oh my gosh, I want to try one so bad.
No. I will say Reese Cups has probably the funniest commercial on TV because they have giant cups and they have like a chocolate lava in them. It's like a liquid chocolate at the bottom. And the commercial is there's like this volcano erupting somewhere and all these people are flocking trying to get the lava. And they're like, "No, it's Reese's lava, not lava.
I guess I have to see it.
I just told that.
I'm just done with you. You're fired. You're both fired. I come with gifts and I get shut up.
Get shafted and your ideas stolen.
I know. It's
Stolen.
crazy. Crazy. Tonight's show, however, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick before we go into it. If you've noticed, last week's show was a repeat. Sorry about that. We slipped that in on you. We had some health issues and we had some technical issues, and it was a cluster of a day. As opposed to not putting out a show or putting something together half-witted, we didn't want to do that. We want good product and good quality stuff for you guys. So we did a repeat. Besides, the interview with Sadah is really good, and we hope to have him back on for a full show very soon. But we do apologize for that, but we figured something was better than nothing, so we threw that out there. Hopefully that won't happen again. So
That wasn't encounters, right?
That was in Encounters, and if you like shorter interviews where it's one-on-one typically, or a very small story about something cool or interesting, if there's no one for the interview that week, then we throw in something every Monday. Check those out. They're real small, real tiny. If you listen to my voice for 20 minutes, you're in good shape. So check those out. The last one we did Monday was on a scary uh, thing that happened in Pikeville, and it's the redacted small version. It's pretty big story that maybe should have covered in a regular episode, but thought it was a neat story. Check it out. It's like 8-10 minutes long. Easy listening. Tonight,
And
Brett.
very interesting story.
Yeah, gosh, it was so
Very true, I should add.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
true. So, Brett, I'm gonna let you start tonight because this is your topic. We had covered this a little bit a long time ago, back when our episodes were not as concise, is what I like to say. So, Jerry and I have a habit of meandering, if you want to call it, around a topic or through a topic. So,
We do a bad history.
and
But
we are trying to get better,
we
and
are.
this is one of those episodes we want to take another look at.
I'm covering the history, so maybe not to steal it from me, maybe the history.
Oh, what are we covering tonight, fellas?
We are covering the Shroud of Turin,
Nice.
one of the most discussed, debated, not one of, it is the most debated artifact in the history of the world.
Even more so than the chronovisor?
The what?
Oh,
Okay. We covered that, I think.
we did.
Barely. Basic. I mean, skimmed over it.
Because that's what it deserved.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
For those of you that are not familiar, the Shroud of Turin is a linen cloth that bears the image of a man who appears to have suffered physical trauma, 100% consistent with the biblical story of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Now, the name is the Shroud of Turin. A shroud is a burial cloth. Turin is a city in Italy where it's been kept since the 1500s. It's also known as the Holy Shroud, and the Shroud of Turin has for centuries been considered by many to be the actual burial shroud used to wrap the body of Jesus of Nazareth after his crucifixion. And they believe that his bodily image is miraculously imprinted on the cloth. And the linen cloth contains markings that, as we alluded to earlier, they seem to correspond to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus. From the marks on the head, the lacerations, as if from the floggings on his back, bruises on his shoulders, and various stains of what is thought to be blood. Now, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke state that Joseph of Arimathea took the body of Jesus after he was taken down from the cross and wrapped him in a linen shroud and placed it in a new tomb. And the Gospel of John says that he used linen cloths. Now, the history of Jesus' burial cloth is largely unknown. A burial cloth, which some people believe was the shroud, was owned by the Byzantine emperors, but it disappeared during the sack of Constantinople in 1204. Now, there are different reports of Jesus' burial shroud after that time, or at least an image of his head of unknown origin that has been revered throughout history in various locations before the 14th century. There is no historical evidence that any of those refers to the shroud, if I can talk, that is currently in Turin. And the Shroud of Turin first emerged historically in 1354, when it's recorded in the hands of a famed French knight, Geoffrey de Charnay, when it was exhibited at a church in Liry, France. The shroud was acquired by the House of Savoy in 1453. It has since been preserved since 1578 in Turin, Italy, first in the Royal Chapel of the Cathedrals of San Giovanni, and since 1683 it has been kept in the Chapel of the Holy Shroud, which was designed for that purpose by the architect Girino Guarini, and which is considered both the Royal Palace and the Turin Cathedral. It's also called the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. Ownership of the shroud passed from the House of Savoy to the Catholic Church after the death of former King Umberto II in 1983. The garment measures 14 feet, 3 inches long. It's 3 inches and 7 inches wide. It's made of flax fibers woven in a 3-to-1 herringbone twill, and the cloth is consistent with fabrics from first century Israel. It is not consistent with fabrics made in medieval Europe. And again, it is in France. It is in the middle of Europe. If it was obviously the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, it came from the Mediterranean area, which is where the cloth is consistent with. Now, historically, the Catholic Church has never officially claimed the shroud to be the authentic burial cloths of Jesus. But to give you a little perspective of how it's viewed in the church, in 1936, Pope Pius XII called the shroud a holy thing, perhaps like nothing else, and he went on to prove the devotion accorded to it as the holy face of Jesus. In 1998 and 2000, Pope John Paul II arranged for public viewings and called the shroud a mirror of the gospel. His successor, Pope Benedict XVI, called it an icon written with the blood of a whipped man, crowned with thorns, crucified, and pierced on his right side. And he also arranged a public display in 2010. Pope Francis made a pilgrimage to see the shroud in 2015. Now, again, if it was from Jesus, somehow it got from Israel to Leary, France. And there's no definitive records of how that trip happened. There's some theories that suggest a possible route, and that's all they are is theories because we don't know. It's also mentioned in a few different instances in Scripture. The not the Shroud of Turin, but the burial cloths of Jesus Christ. Matthew 27:59 and 60, it says, when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. John, probably the most commonly used scripture in reference to the Shroud of Turin, is the 20th chapter of John, verses 6 and 7, that says, then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the cloth that had been around his head not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. So that's a little bit of the history. Now it's time to turn it over to Mr. Brett.
So as Jerry kind of mentioned, uh, the Shroud of Turin is the most studied archaeological artifact in the history of the world. Uh, they've been studying this thing for hundreds of years, and we've actually learned a lot from it. So the first thing that we've learned is how this man died. So first off, you can see scourge marks where the man was whipped on the front side of the man and the back side. If you've seen The Passion of the Christ, um,
Well, they're making a sequel to that too.
I know.
Sorry.
Mel Gibson, he took what they found on the shroud and he applied that to the movie. He made a few changes, but that was one of the things he took from the Shroud of Turin was that he was whipped on the front and the back. A forensic doctor in Italy found that there was 240 scorch marks on the back and 140 scorch marks on the front. They can even determine at what angle the man was struck using the evidence left on the shroud. In the 1980s, they were actually able to draw an arc of the scourging for each of the scorch marks found, and even determined that there were two men who were hitting him, one being a little taller, and the other one was a little shorter. I thought that was remarkable. I don't know how they did that, but I thought that was pretty fascinating, especially when you think if it was in the 80s, which we've come such a far way since then. As you guys know, I of course don't, so I wasn't alive then.
Thanks, Brett.
The second thing is that obviously the Bible says that Jesus carried the cross. They've determined from a spot on his right shoulder that he had been carrying a single beam, and that the beam weighed between 50 and 75 kilos. Again, I'm not really sure all the science that goes into how they determined that, but I thought that was pretty remarkable as well. They found nail wounds in the wrists, where the nails held his arms up on the cross. A French surgeon wrote a book called A Doctor at Calvary. Of course, in the Bible it says that his hands were pierced. And so a French surgeon wrote a book called A Doctor at Calvary and said that the place in the wrist that was pierced, according to the shroud, was between two nerves, and that the pressure on those two nerves would send a huge shockwave of pain. So this man was pierced in one of the worst places that you can be pierced.
Not only that, it's also been proven that if you were actually crucified by your hands, that it wouldn't support your
It
weight.
wouldn't support your weight. Yeah, it would just
Your body would just
break right through.
pull the hand
Yeah.
apart.
And again, this is like one of the arguments against the fact that this would have been falsely created, because if you're falsely creating a burial cloth of Jesus, you would probably go off of a lot of the artwork around that time, which was almost all the artwork shown of him being crucified is through his the nails through his hands. Let's see. And yeah, you had just mentioned that putting it through the palm, it would just come right through the tissue. Um, and we know that it wasn't in the hands as well, because from first century literature, you could be crucified for around 2 weeks and not die. So these people who were crucified by the Romans were hung for very long periods of time. The next thing is the crown of thorns. So the wounds on the top of his head show that instead of a crown, which is what is usually depicted with an opening at the top, it was actually more of like a helmet of thorns, where the thorns cover every area of the head. So this again is kind of contrary to what is depicted in a lot of art, and again would be someone who was trying to create a false object probably would have went with what art depicts as the crown instead of this helmet. The thorns that are believed to have been used when dry are basically like nails, and they pierce right through the skin. Um, so in Greek, Stephanos means crown, which is where your names come from.
It is.
Uh, the Stephanos in the Old Testament.
Take heed to that, Jerry.
Yeah. So the Stephanos in the Old Testament. Yeah.
Jerry in Old English equals cobblepot or chamber pot.
I see. And I won't ask where you got that one.
From my chamber pot.
That's what I figured.
Sorry, Brett.
So
He stole my joke.
you had to give it back.
I did.
The Stephanos in the Old Testament was the crown that the priest would wear, which, according to the end of Exodus, covered the entire head. So when they were making a crown, it does make sense that they would make it. A crowns back then would have been covering the entire head instead of leaving the opening at the top. And for those who believe that Jesus is basically symbolic of the new high priest, it would make sense that he would be wearing some sort of priestly crown when he was crucified.
I was just going to ask, how badly do you have to be either threatened by or angry at or indifferent to human life to put anybody, much less Jesus, through this type of torture? I mean, this is bad.
Well,
It is.
the Romans wouldn't even crucify other Romans. Like, if you're a Roman, this was beneath you. This was
Yeah.
for the lowest of the low.
Right.
And really, after Jesus was crucified, of course, I don't want to really get into whether I believe or not, but not yet, at least. But when Jesus was crucified, after the fact, the Romans were like, "Why are you following this guy? I mean, we embarrassed him.
Yeah.
We crucified him, and he died. Like, we killed him. We killed your God."
Yeah.
And then, like, the church just kept growing.
Well, to me, I watched an interview with Mel Gibson about how he had to pull back
Yeah.
from what was written about what actually happened.
Which is crazy.
And it is insane.
If you watch the movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't, watch it and you'll understand exactly what that
It's
means.
tough to watch, for
It's
sure.
tough
I've only seen it once, so. And they can see the blood running down his head and neck that's transferred onto the shroud, which is again consistent with the wounds from the crown. The next one is one that I think is really cool. So in the Gospel of Luke, it states that I'll just quote Luke 22, verse 44. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. This is right before he was crucified. He prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. So, what makes this stand out, and as being from the Gospel of Luke, what do we know about Luke? Kind of sets him apart from the other writers of the Gospels. He was a doctor.
Yes.
So, there are several peer-reviewed papers on the condition called hematidrosis, which causes a person to sweat blood. And this condition actually leaves the skin extremely sensitive to the touch. So one thing that when I was researching this, I thought was really interesting, talking about how this whole crucifixion was much worse than than even the passion represented. If you remember, Judas comes and kisses him on the face, as a sign of like this is the man right here, and this condition would have made that case made that kiss cause him intense physical pain on his face, and evidence of these uh, these wounds on his face, these blood vessels that had burst on his face, is actually found on the shroud. They can even determine the blood type of the man. It's AB, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Eucharistic miracles, but
A little
uh,
bit.
the Eucharist is like the communion in the Catholic Church. Um, but basically, Eucharistic miracle is when uh, the host had bled or turned into flesh, and when they studied these, they found that the blood type was AB, and it corresponds to the blood type on the shroud, which I think is pretty cool. So one of the best discoveries is the photo negative on of the shroud presents a much clearer image of the man. So in the olden days, back in Jerry's time, photographs would first reveal a negative image where the light areas appear dark, dark areas appear light, which is then developed into a positive print. One such photo was taken of the shroud in 1898, which revealed a positive image of the face and body of the man.
Do you know how we came and found that out? How that was applied?
Yeah, I think it was like a lawyer. He actually took a picture of the shroud, and when the photo negative was shown, it showed a photo positive image basically of the
Gotcha. Interesting.
um, and this means that the shroud is essentially a photograph of the person who was wrapped in the cloth.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before photography was invented.
Right.
The fact that it is a photographic negative,
The amount of, was it light or heat that does that?
Yeah, just it's the amount of light. It's like I was going to get to that too, but
Oh, sorry.
no, yeah, 4 to 8 billion uh 48 billion gigawatts, which is almost the amount of power that New York City takes to power for one
That's
day.
would
insane.
be required.
Right. In that instant to yeah, to
Yes.
put that image on the shroud, which they wouldn't have been able to do in
Right.
the 13, 14,
Not
fifteen
even close.
hundreds.
Yeah, even if it was a fake, then it would have had to happen in the late 1300s. None of this stuff was available.
Even today, they have replicated it on very in small increments. It would be very difficult to recreate this
Right.
today.
Even today.
In 1978, a team of American scientists traveled to Turin, Italy, to conduct an in-depth examination of the shroud. The expedition was named the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STIR. The team took over 2 years prior to performing the studies to plan dozens of experiments, measurements, and tests. And it was the most extensive hands-on study the shroud ever performed. They studied the shroud for 5 full days, taking shifts to oversee the experiments uh, 24 hours a day. So first off, they looked at how the image was made. Um, so no pigments, paints, dyes, or stains have been found. X-ray fluorescence and microchemistry on the fibers precluded that the possibility of paint being used as a method for creating the image. Um, Ultraviolet and infrared evaluation confirm these studies. Computer image enhancement and analysis by a device known as a BP8 image analyzer show that the image has unique three-dimensional information encoded in it. And I don't know if you've guys seen, but they've actually recreated that 3D image in a statue, and they have it like showing how he was laying in the tomb, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's super amazing. And all from this one image. I think it's incredible. Microchemical evaluation has indicated no evidence of any spices, oils, or biochemicals known to be produced by the body in life or in death. It is clear that there has been a direct contact of the shroud with the body, which explains certain features such as scorch marks as well as the blood. However, while this type of contact might explain some of the features, it's totally incapable of explaining the image of the face with the high resolution that has been amply demonstrated by photography. This is from their actual study, from their conclusion. It says, quote, "We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of a real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. The bloodstains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum albumin." So another thing they found was dirt that and in the areas of the nose, knees, and soles of the feet. Which again, if you just think of the story of Jesus carrying the cross, him falling, and then finding on the nose, knees, and soles of the feet. I mean, he fell on his face, which again, after being whipped and tortured, um, again, it just adds so much to the passion. But this dirt, known as travertine aragonite, is unique to Jerusalem and a very few other places. The dirt can also be found on the steps of the temple in Jerusalem, which were preserved after the temple's destruction in 70 AD. They've also found pollen, 204 different pollen grains that were made up of 49 different types of pollen. 13 of these were unique to Jerusalem, and others were unique to Constantinople, which is consistent with the history of the shroud, as Jerry went through. So they've also looked at, can we reproduce this? We kind of already touched on this, but a team of researchers from the National Agency for New Technologies in Italy found that the body image was formed by a sort of electromagnetic source of energy. The researchers successfully achieved a superficial coloration similar to that of the body image. Uh, by excimer laser irradiation, which is a spectrum of the emitted light in the ultraviolet and vacuum ultraviolet. Uh, they obtained at least one fiber color across the sub-micrometer depth, comparable with thinnest coloration depth observed in the Turin shroud. So that's another thing that was really incredible, is like the depth of the image is like micrometers deep. I mean, it's super thin. Um, so if you are using some sort of laser just to get that precision would be very difficult.
Today.
Right. Right.
Impossible
Today.
in
Right.
1300. Unthinkable.
Right. However, they found that the total radiation power required to color a linen surface corresponding to a human body makes impossible the reproduction of the Turin shroud image by using a single laser, which again, this continues to add to this the incredibleness of this object. This is a quote from the study. Our research proves that it's very difficult, almost impossible, replicating today all the main physical and chemical characteristics of the body image embedded into the Shroud of Turin. This was Dr. Paolo Di Lazzaro, who was the lead author and senior researcher at the research center. As a consequence, it appears unlikely a forger may have done this image with technologies available in the Middle Age or earlier. The probability the shroud is a fake, really very, very low. On the other hand, our results taken alone cannot prove the shroud is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. One should add our results to all other historical, medical, paleontological, textile evidences accumulated in the last 35 years. And again, 4 to 8 billion watts of power. And again, New York City during a day takes about 5.5 to 10 billion watts of power to produce. And they say that if you live in New York City for like 10 years and go to a different restaurant every day, you still wouldn't make it to all the restaurants or something like that. So
I've heard that.
they need a lot of power to power the city. And again, this is all in one instant to try yeah.
The garment, there's no way it's fake. I mean, we can debate upon whether or not it was Jesus's burial garment. This was a burial garment of a man who was crucified and had the wounds on him were consistent with the biblical telling of the crucifixion. So, what are the odds? It's a heck of a coincidence if it's not his burial garment.
Well, it could definitely be a fake. If you believe that the Egyptians could build the pyramids, then we could certainly have the technology to fake a cloth.
It's true, especially with the recent findings under the pyramid.
This would put building the pyramids. We could come closer to explaining how they were built than this.
No,
As he just said, if you were to fake the whole thing, and I don't know of anyone that would say the whole thing is fake, everyone would say it is a burial garment of someone.
Right.
Even if they don't believe in religion. If they're an atheist, they would say it's the burial garment of someone. There's
even atheists and agnostics and Islamic or Muslims believe Jesus existed. Sure. There's not a question of whether he existed. The thing that happened after he took the garment off is where people get a little conflicted.
Or whether he took it off. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I'm almost done too.
No, you're fine.
I don't mean to go so long.
No, you're fine. I was just going to ask you one more question because it's fascinating. Do you think that light happened after it was put on or right before it was taken off?
What light?
The light that it would take, the heat, the energy that it would take
Right.
to
To,
to
to translate that
to
image on.
translate that image that we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes.
No, that's not. It would take that energy if it was faked.
It
If it
would
was
take that
inauthentic.
energy if it was real.
No. Would it?
Yeah. So that's basically what it's some sort of, it's basically acts as a photograph. So that they believe that it was 4 to 8 billion watts of light, essentially, of electromagnetic
That was
radiation.
required to make that image, whether it's of him or not? I thought that was saying that if it would take that to fake the process.
So just let me throw this out there and we don't delve into deep religion here, but how freaking amazing is that happened, knowing and for me, there's no doubt it didn't happen until he was getting ready to take it off, right? That was the whoosh moment.
But yeah, that's what people who
You know what I mean?
Shroud, it's like
And that's what gets me excited.
him coming back to life. That
Right.
the energy it took to do that is what caused this image to be translated onto the shroud. So the last thing I wanted to talk about that they've studied is when the shroud can be dated to, and this has been the most controversial over the last 20 something years. So in 1988, radiocarbon dating, which is the most precise way of dating an object, was done on the shroud, and it was concluded that the cloth was made between 1260 and 1390 AD, which is obviously not the time of Christ.
And that
So,
was by 3 different separate
right,
organizations.
yeah, and now they all of the measurements. So they took. Well, I'll get into that in a second. So they basically came out and said this has been debunked. So one problem with this experiment or with this radiocarbon dating was that they took uh, pieces from the corner of the cloth. And so when you do radiocarbon dating, you have to destroy the object. Um, you basically like combust, and then they measure the carbon that comes off of it. And so they obviously didn't want to take a piece from the center. So they took a piece from the corners. And if you look at early images or if you look at images of the shroud, you can tell that the corners are a little bit discolored compared to the rest of the cloth. So you can already tell that that's different. Also, another thing that people were saying that kind of countered this was if you're going to hold the shroud up, you're going to hold it at the corners. So those are the places that would get the most wear and tear. There's actually a picture of a bishop holding up the shroud with his bare hands. I think you mentioned that when we were talking about this, but
There's one other explanation that explains that very well. There was a fire, I forget when,
right,
preceding this. It was given to a order of nuns who did some repair on not on the corners, on the outside perimeter. They actually repaired pieces that had been damaged by the fire. Some people think that the Catholic Church took these 3 pieces and sent it to 3 independent laboratories. They think they took pieces from where the nuns had repaired it, which would put it exactly about the
right.
time when they were doing the repair.
And they even like so they took pieces like basically starting from the outside of the cloth going in, and apparently the dates kept getting older as they went further into the cloth, which is
And those
pretty
dates themselves are in question too, are they not? I think
right.
you'll probably get to that.
Yeah. Uh, so textile experts actually have examined the shroud since, and they see a misaligned weave in the shroud. They say that a technique called a French invisible weave was used so that the repaired would look uniform. Since the new fabric was white compared to the rest of the fabric, they would add like a plant gum to make the color uniform. And this was confirmed in a scientific paper presented by one of the scientists involved in STIRP, determining that what was analyzed was a blend of first and 16th century materials, giving us the resulting medieval date. There was a new study published in 2022. Funny enough, gained a lot of attention last year in 2024, and it shows that the shroud can be dated to the time of Christ. So they did not do radiocarbon dating on this one. They used a method called wide angle X-ray scattering, or WAXS, to inspect the shroud's degradation. So in the study, they determined it has too much degradation to be only around a few hundred years, and would actually suggest that if it would need to be stored for 6 centuries in the hottest conditions registered on Earth to align with the findings in 1988. So this to me is was kind of the nail in the coffin when this came out, as far as, hey, we actually did date it again, and this study showed that it was correlates to the time of Christ. Uh, yeah, so that's kind of all I got as far as the scientific study. Sorry for going so long, but
No,
there's
no,
just
no.
so much to get into there.
One thing. First of all, and I want to precede that by saying I believe in it.
That's two things.
No, I digress first. Before
Three things.
there is one argument against the authenticity that I have trouble with, and that is the Bible. Let me go back and read John again. John chapter 20, verses 6 and 7. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the cloth that had been found around his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. John Calvin in the 1600s wrote a paper where he said that it was not authentic because he said that the Jewish tradition was that the body was wrapped with one piece of cloth, that a separate piece was used for the head, just like John chapter 20, verses 6 and 7 says. But yet this garment is not two pieces. This garment is one piece. So,
No,
can't
this
explain
is
that?
the best argument against it. And so the explanation that I've seen is that it is believed that the single garment covered his face and his body, and then there was another garment that was just wrapped around the face.
Yeah, I've read that.
One other thing, and that's really that's the only explanation you can really come up with as far as that, because yeah, like
What?
you said, the Bible says that there was definitely a separate facial garment. But there is one thing I forgot to say. Sorry.
No,
Uh,
go ahead.
but on the face, they actually can see that they put two coins over the eyes, and the coins were Roman from that time, which is pretty insane. So again, that's just another crazy fact there they found. But yeah, so I agree. That's one of the that's the definitely the best argument against it that I've heard.
Look,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
couple of interesting facts. In 1453, the shroud was sold. Any idea what it was sold for? What do you think the worth of a supposed burial garment of Jesus would have been worth in 1453? Margaret de Charnay sold the shroud for 2 castles. So that's what they viewed the value in 1453. She sold the castles to the royal house of Savoy, which ruled over parts of modern day France, Italy, and Switzerland. The house later ascended to the Italian throne. As punishment for selling the shroud, she was excommunicated from the church. So apparently they took that pretty serious.
You know,
One other interesting fact there was, first of all, again, I digress. So, 2 things for Mr. Steve. The shroud is guarded behind security cameras and bulletproof glass. Pretty smart, right? Normally, it later proved to almost be the shroud's demise. There was a fire in 1997. Firefighters had to break through 4 layers of bulletproof glass to be able to save the shroud.
1997. That's a good year.
You're born, I'm assuming. There you go.
Yep.
Very good year.
Yep. So, and you were talking about the Bible. I just want to. Sorry, I keep going. And
No, 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 go ahead.
I listen. Yeah, we could talk about this for hours. But uh, one thing that Scripture has, it says in each of the Gospels. I'll just read from one of them real quick. Uh, so Peter had reached the tomb first, and stooping in to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Oh, sorry. John reaching the tomb first. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went to the tomb. He saw the linen cloths lying there, the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. So all of the Gospels kind of say something similar, where they go in, they see the cloths, and they believe. And so what people who believe in the shroud think about this is that they saw the shroud's image on the cloth, and that, along with the empty tomb, led them to believe that he actually did rise from the dead. So,
Well,
sorry to keep pushing you off. Steve.
no, I don't care. It's fine. So in 1978, during a 5-week exhibit, how many? Whoa, was loud. Sorry. How many folks do you think during a 5-week exhibit to actually see the actual Shroud of Turin showed up? This is way back in 78. So, wasn't near 3.5 million people in 5 weeks. In April of 2020, during COVID, the Shroud entered the digital age. Turin Archbishop, no, I'm not even going to try his name, announced that in the light of devastation of COVID-19, people around the world would be able to visit the Shroud of Turin online for Easter. He said that he was motivated to provide the live stream, which was publicly displayed all the way back in 2015. Why on earth is this thing not always available to be seen online?
You would think.
I mean, they have cameras on it. Anyway,
I wonder if it has something to do with the light. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know, but I'm just thinking out loud. Like if the light's on it, it makes it degrade. I don't know. Like UV.
who knows?
Yeah, I have no idea.
So, if you, Brett, wanted to go to Turin and see the Shroud of Turin, what do you think the process would be? Do you think you could just walk into a building and check it out?
I imagine not. You can't
Yeah.
do that with a Declaration of Independence.
No,
Read somewhere. If I remember right, it's been a few years since you could see it. Is that correct?
2015.
Okay.
That was the last time it's been displayed publicly. Now, they are saying that this year it's supposed to go back on tour. They've said that 3 other times in the past,
No, I got you.
Who?
and it just never
Catholic
happened.
Church said
Yeah.
that, or the rumors? I doubt the Catholic Church would tease that and not it happen. Probably rumors.
See
Could have been
the,
during COVID too. That maybe
Could have been.
Seeing the actual Shroud of Turin involves a few very specific steps, especially since it is rarely displayed to the public. Here's what you need to know. And back to the Declaration of Independence. I just have a quick horse to hop on that. It doesn't matter these days if people could see that, or the Constitution for that matter, because they don't even teach people to read cursive. Most of the people in the United States can't even read what's on the damn documents, let alone be able to read to see it. But anyway, I'm off my high horse. I think that's the most ridiculous thing ever. It's one of those things that's so small.
5-year-old can write.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a good parent.
Well, it's not me.
Well,
Grandmother. But
her grandmother and her mom are good parents.
yeah.
You're just
You're
you're a slough.
I can't hardly write.
So to see this, because the Shroud is so rarely displayed to the public, here's what you need to know. You have to check for public display announcements. The Shroud of Turin is only displayed during special occasions, and apparently they haven't had one since 2015. The next planned public display was announced for 2025, but it has changed even then into a virtual display instead. Visit the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. The Shroud is housed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. While the original Shroud is not on regular display, you can still visit the cathedral and the adjacent museum dedicated to the Shroud, which you can't see. Also, you can participate in the virtual pilgrimage. For 2025, a virtual pilgrimage is being organized, allowing people worldwide to see and reflect on the Shroud through digital means. I just got to ask a really obvious question here. What's the difference in that and then Googling a picture of the Shroud? To me, I don't.
Proximity, maybe just feeling close to it. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, I agree. I kind of agree with you.
You know what I mean?
To a large extent, yeah.
And even if you're looking at just at the Google image, you could zoom in,
Like-
really look at it.
And I kind of get it. If something is withheld, it gains more and more mystique about it. Here's a good example: the Hope Diamond, right? Big, beautiful diamond, millions and billions of dollars worth. When we were going, and that's housed, if I'm not mistaken, in the Smithsonian now, right? When we were in the Smithsonian, when we came out to visit you, we were walking around. I turned the corner, there's the Hope Diamond, and I'm like, oh, there it is, and that was it. It was like no mystique about it at all. So I kind of get it. I understand. The fourth thing is you can attend a special event. Keep an eye on the special events and masses related to the Shroud. For example, there will be a mass on March 4th coming up, 2025, at the Turin Cathedral, at which will be part of the jubilation celebrations. But you don't even get to see the real Shroud of Turin then. So basically, in order to actually see the Shroud of Turin, you have to devote yourself to the Catholic religion, become a priest or priestess or
There's no priestess.
or a priest in the very upper echelons, then get assigned to the place in Turin,
That's not going to happen.
and then
Yeah, it's gonna be very
and
difficult.
then you get to see a door with a room that has a that has it behind it. So basically, my whole section was just to say that go to Google.
I wonder if they're kind of afraid to play it in public just because of I don't know if you've seen some of those protesters who have like
Oh,
they
gosh.
sprayed like Stonehenge with all
Dude, yeah.
paint, did the Mona Lisa with all
Well,
these orange paint.
even when they display it, it's still going to be behind layers.
Right,
You're
yeah.
not going to damage it. I'm beginning to think more of what Steve said with the cameras, or was it you? One of you said maybe it's light is the reason they don't. It could be.
It sends its light.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like you don't want to keep a cigar not in a humidor.
I mean, think about you're talking about the links we go to for the Constitution.
Right.
That's only a few hundred years old.
Right.
This, a couple thousand years old.
Yeah.
So big difference.
Well, the Shroud of Turin is definitely one of the most interesting things we've covered. And I truly believe I'm with let's hold that. So what do you think? Jerry, we'll start with you tonight.
Definitely.
Definitely more. Thumbs up from Jerry. Wow.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs. Wow, that is a record. Have we ever gotten 2 thumbs up from Jerry?
Few, but very few and far between.
I feel like we've gotten a few, yeah. Few of the UFO stories, I think.
Well, I'm going to also give it a thumbs up. I think it's fascinating. I think it's neat. I definitely believe. I really believe that it could very well be the burial cloth of Jesus. I mean, if in you go all the way back to the 1500s when it was sold for 2 castles. Castles were expensive. They were not. They were not something you just went out and paid a few coins for.
Yeah.
And she got 2. And risk being excommunicated because of her greed. But that's how important it was to the church that, okay, you did this, you're no longer allowed to be with us because of that. And the church has never wavered.
I think you're going to say a pretty good statement at the end, right?
Yeah.
But so, yeah. And if you think about it, if you believe that, if you believe in Jesus, you believe that he's God. 2, if you believe in the shroud, you believe that this was touching Jesus, who is God, and has his blood, the blood of God, essentially. So yeah, to just willy-nilly give up an object that is that sacred, would be frowned upon.
There's an object we didn't talk about that is directly related to this, which is the Spear of Destiny, which to his much to his dismay, Adolf Hitler spent a fortune trying to find. That was supposedly the spear that pierced Jesus' side, which is a whole different show. We're not going to get into that today. But I also think it gets a thumbs up. I think it's a fascinating thought. And what amazes me and thrills me and excites me the most is the amount of energy it took to create this. And when there's only one way that energy gets transposed to me, and that's when, Jesus came back to life. Hands down, 2 thumbs up. What about you, Brett?
Yeah, I would definitely give it 2 thumbs up. I believe that it is the burial cloth of Jesus, and I know we've talked about, we don't really get too religious on the show. We're all Christians, but I also believe that if you're into conspiracy theories and you believe some of the other things that like such as aliens, Bigfoot, things like that, I would argue that there's a lot less evidence for that than there is the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. If you are into conspiracies and you are skeptical of at least the Christian faith, I strongly recommend that you would look into the evidence. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, I'll give it 2 thumbs up.
Well, that's pretty intense. I'm excited. Was you going to say something else, Jerry?
Yeah. One last thing. It's fun. It's interesting to sit and have these discussions. I saw a statement from the Catholic Church a while back that summed it up far better than I ever could. And it said this: in the church's view, whether the cloth is authentic or not has no bearing whatsoever on the validity of what Jesus taught or on the saving power of his death and resurrection. That's what it's all about. For episodes, And
We go from the Shroud of Turin to Pendle Hill in Lancashire, England. Once home to wild boar, ancient woodland, and wolves, now Pendle Hill is steeped in mystery. Bewitched by a legacy of 1612 in the 17th century, Europe was in the claws of the witch hunting mania. In England, and this was peaked in Pendle. In 1612, Alison Device confessed to having asked the devil to curse a peddler, and the members of her family and his rivals were rounded up and taken to trial. But all but one were found guilty of murder by sorcery, plus a baloney plot to blow up the entire town. The castle uh, was hanged, boasting about meeting the devil in a quarry wouldn't have helped. But the witches were most likely wrongly convicted due to reputational wars between the Chetars, oh my gosh, what a word, and the Demites. Sounds like our Hatfields and McCoys,
yep.
which revolved around healing and or black magic. They haunt the villages in the shadow of Pendle Hill, where visitors report sudden, intense rage, ghostly whispers, unexplained scratches, and even being choked, while locals dread the apparitions that dart around the hill every night.